We continue now in our series of conversations here about the New York SAFE Act and the mental hygiene law. Bob Savage along with Bill Robinson from the Second Amendment Show. And our next guest in studio is Paloma Capanna, Esquire, the heroine of the series here. Paloma, welcome to the studio here. So we've heard the story of Don Montgomery and Donna McKay now. Tip of the iceberg time, right?
It is.
I mean, this when we see how broadly the SAFE Act can be misconstrued and it can be used as a tool of harassment for otherwise law-abiding citizens in the state, it's a scary prospect.
It is. And please understand that for every Don Montgomery and every Donna McKay are dozens and dozens of more people whose names you don't know. These are lead plaintiffs on cases involving co-plaintiffs. These are individuals fighting to get their permits restored. And permit proceedings in the state of New York are sealed. So it's not the kind of thing that's easy to run around and research. So when I say, even just within my law office, we're now talking about 12 to 15 people, all of whom fit a very similar legal pattern, that's correct. You're hearing Don Montgomery and Donna McKay on behalf of many other people.
Yeah. Well, the SAFE Act. So in short, let's just review that for 2 minutes here. The SAFE Act. How would you analyze this overall now in the positions you're in as a lawyer and what dealing here with this latest Don Montgomery case and Donna McKay case and several others? Make it 101 sandbox level for our listeners. What's the story with the SAFE Act? What needs to be done? Just give us your thoughts on this now.
The tweet version would be repeal the SAFE Act.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
That remains as vital today as more than 3 years ago when it was first passed in January 2013.
Because it's bad law.
From top to bottom, 39 pages of page after page of unconstitutional provisions impacting 12 discrete areas of law. So today we're only talking about one of those 12 areas. We're talking about the mental hygiene law amendments and new provisions. We could equally have 11 different other shows talking about all the other areas that the SAFE Act impacted. But as concerns the mental hygiene law, I think the top line summary is this. I think it's reasonable to say that this Governor Cuomo, expected that he could pick on a weak population of persons who would never find an attorney, who would be too embarrassed to come forward, and he could simply go through and confiscate firearms from an entire segment of the population, and nobody was going to squawk one word.
Yep.
The aspects, let's talk about some of the aspects of illegality here when it comes to the New York SAFE Act. And we've touched on this in both the Don's conversation and Donna's conversation. No investigations being conducted under color of law here.
That is correct. So let's just identify the transit of the alleged information. Starts with the patient interfacing with a medical provider or a hospital, that medical provider transmitting information, which in the case of every one of my clients has been false accusation of involuntary commitment to a mental institution. So from the medical provider to the Office of Mental Health of the state of New York.
Now, that goes through, is there not a county stop in between? There's a county officer that supposedly this information gets transmitted to and a decision is made, at least it's alleged, that is kind of a clearinghouse before it goes to the state?
The black letter of the statute says this, yes. Now, remember, SAFE Act is passed January 2013. May 2013 already, the New York State Senate convened the leading mental health experts in the state of New York to provide testimony. And already, May 2013, the alarm bells were sounded by persons who both have access to this information and who indeed are the administrators of these types of programs, saying, we can't possibly review patient records at the county level So senators, be aware it's getting pushed through.
It's going to be rubber stamped, and there's no mechanism by which these county officials can perform this function.
They can't keep up with it. I mean, I'm certainly willing to concede the point that the manpower does not exist at the county level for what this governor thought was going to happen. He certainly didn't discuss it with anybody in advance. He did not seek their advice and counsel. And look, every single person who testified that day, including a very prominent attorney from the ACLU, said this thing was a disaster from go. Immediately, this is creating friction between medical providers and patients who should be concerned first and foremost with seeking the treatment that they need without being afraid that the New York State Police are standing in the room with them and their doctor.
Let's talk about the falsity of the allegations. These people present with, in the case of Don Montgomery, insomnia. In the case of Donna McKay, dropping blood pressure as a result of a hypnotic drug that she took for bronchitis. It was a
cough syrup with codeine.
Codeine cough syrup.
Correct.
Some people react very badly to these things. What is the genesis of the false allegations? How does that occur? Is that made out of whole cloth at the state level?
The understanding that came forth from testimony as early as May 2013, I'm repeating that because I want to really get it across to our listeners that the New York State Senate was on notice right away, right after this passed, from the professionals who are administering these services. It's going through as soon as someone shows up at the emergency room door for the mental health unit.
And so people understand when you show up at a hospital as a patient in the ER or whatever, there is, of course, they're always tapping away on a computer. This is all part of Obamacare, actually, really, and a drop-down menu, a collapsible menu, opens up, and some data gets entered into that box, if you will. And this forms the basis for a mental hygiene report to the state. But there's an interpretation of this information. Have I got that right, Paloma? Am I off track here?
See, this is where I just love working with the two of you, because you and I, and I'm sure our listeners as well, are concerned with the truth.
Well,
we are assuming someone will check the records and the data entry and be the double check that when it is something as important as the potential permanent deprivation of the fundamental freedoms that are enshrined in the Second Amendment, that you would think at least one more pair of eyes would be looking at this to make sure that it's accurate. But not only is that not the case, when the information transits from OMH across to DCJS, the Department of Criminal Justice Services. Notice how I've made that leap from mental health to criminal.
Yeah.
DCJS in the Montgomery versus Cuomo case has admitted that they use mental hygiene law section 9.41 as a misnomer.
Mm-hmm. As a misnomer. Okay. What are the implications of that?
The implication is that you are reported to the FBI, you are placed in the NCIC, and for any background check that would ever be run against a future gun purchase that you may wish to make at a federally licensed dealer when you fill out your ATF Form 4473, that you will be denied.
Okay, the point I'm trying to get to here, I get all that. There, at some point in this, between Donna McKay's presenting at the hospital with dropping blood pressure from codeine, which was legally prescribed, and the arrival of 3 deputies in Yates County to take away her guns, an ideology was injected into this procedure. And I'm curious to know what the most likely source of that ideological and authoritarian intervention is. Where's that coming? Is it at the state police level?
Andrew.
Okay, but Andrew is not seeing each one of these things.
Yeah.
No, but Andrew Cuomo infused the SAFE Act with his personal police department.
Now we're getting somewhere. Okay,
Yeah,
go ahead, Bill.
And I guess I talked with a nurse a few days ago, and she told me that if you go into the office and they have a bank of questions they ask you, And one of them, as we covered, we asked Don, I think it was when we interviewed Don, did he, or
Donna.
Donna was actually Donna, the last one. Were you asked if you own any guns? So apparently, somehow, once they,
It's happening before that.
even before that. So you think it's
Correct.
ahead of that then?
I know that it's ahead of that
Okay.
because we have sworn testimony from a very reputable psychiatrist in one of the license hearings
Yeah.
that he checks the box on an electronic form as the patient presents
Mm-hmm.
at the emergency department. Now, what does that mean in medical speak? In medical speak, the point that the person is walking through the door voluntarily to the emergency department, no risk assessment has been conducted. You don't know, is that person a danger or not a danger? We don't even have a profile written up. You know, the first thing that they're doing is, do you have a medical insurance card?
Yeah,
Right? And are
exactly,
we going to be able to admit this patient and have coverage or not? And so forth. The form is getting signed as soon as the person arrives. Now, when questioned about this, the testimony is very interesting in that case because initially the psychiatrist is saying, but this form is required by the SAFE Act. This is his testimony. And I do this for every patient. And it's only as the attorney is then asking him more and more questions that the light bulb's going on for the psychiatrist that this could actually be a problem. Now, why is that the unwitting error of the psychiatrist to be notifying the state about every patient coming through? Because the Office of Mental Health is actually going into hospitals and training medical professionals that is their obligation to report patients. It is not mandatory under the SAFE Act to report a patient pursuant to Mental Hygiene Law Section 9.46, which is a voluntary reporting system that even if a patient is not involuntarily committed, they maybe shouldn't have a gun. So somebody can make a report under 9.46, right? That is completely optional. There's no civil or criminal penalties for a provider who does not report a patient in that circumstance. But the 9.41 involuntary number is the other on-ramp into this whole mess. And that's where
the
the
psychiatrist level.
confusion is actually occurring between the door of the hospital and the DCJS. And once that misnomer is tagged onto a file that actually started as 9.39, in some instances falsely, because a 9.39 is really supposed to be
What's that?
police transport to the
Oh.
door of the hospital.
Wow.
The 9.39, you're supposed to be writing down on the form the badge number, the law enforcement department that transported the patient to the hospital, and then you've got a whole protocol that goes from there. And in one such case, the 9.39 form at the hospital with all the correct pre-printed information for the mental health professional to fill in that whole big block, the person handwrites self. The person had brought themselves to the hospital. Now, you think that the medical professional would have caught on that if there's all these boxes to fill in for police transport and you don't have maybe you have the wrong form.
I'm thinking.
There you go.
But this is part of how it's all getting jumbled because OMH and this governor are creating an atmosphere for the medical professionals that has them concerned they're going to get sued. DCJS is not concerned about anything. They're just turning it into a soup. And it's all flowing to the New York State Police. And let me tell you, the New York State Police feel empowered and emboldened to go out and confiscate.
But in the case of Donna McKay, it wasn't the state police.
Oh, yes, it was.
they
In
sent-
every single case,
they
it's the
requested.
New York State Police sending a form letter, 1.5 pages
Oh, I
long,
see.
all signed by the same person, to the county pistol license clerk, who then notifies local law enforcement and the judge. And when local does not pick up fast enough, NYSP is on the phone to local nonstop. I have more complaints from local on the ground sheriff's departments and local police departments of the harassment of New York State Police that they're not getting out fast enough to do the confiscation, as I do complaints from people that their license has been pulled.
And as we have touched base with in the case of Donna and in Don in the previous conversations here, this is not. There's no public safety component to all of this.
No.
This is bureaucratic. This is nothing but gun grabbing under color of law.
Look, there's so many days passing between the discharge of my clients And the confiscation, that if there was a public safety issue, all of my clients would already be dead. They would have all committed suicide using their firearms, and not one of them made any threats involving a firearm. None of them showed a firearm. None of them used a firearm. None of them had any suicidal ideation. None of them had any suicidal thoughts that were expressed.
No
We're
history
talking
of violent
about,
behavior? Or
absolutely. In fact, Donna McKay's risk assessment, 4 points out of 68. That's why she was sharing with the listeners the hospital didn't even know if they could admit her. She was so low, a risk assessment, she was off the charts low.
Yeah, all right. Well, our key here is that when you get into that hospital and they start filling these forms out, then our suspicion is if because I've heard this from many people, they don't like being asked, first of all, if you own a gun. So that really raises red flags immediately, because it's really none of their business, especially if you're not in there and stating to any doctors or nurses that you are suicidal or feel you're depressed, you don't feel good enough, or you got some serious problems. That's not an issue. So they're not saying that they're suicidal. They're not threatening anyone. So how is the police even getting anything on this? This is outrageous that they're even involved with this.
It's called overreach.
Overreach.
If I'm sitting here and I am one of the very esteemed attorneys in the New York City office of the ACLU, and there's a good 20 attorneys in that office alone. And if I'm sitting here talking to you, what I'm saying is you've got overreach. The governor doesn't care. He just wants the reporting. And for the less than 1% of persons who get reported, who have a license, that's the only reason we know that this is even going on, is because they're going after those who have a license. That's just the beginning of where this program could go. If this governor wanted to start executing on confiscation of long guns and actually start knocking on the doors of every person who was reported, saying, let me walk through your house, even if the person's saying, well, excuse me, I've never owned a gun, I've never fired a gun, I have no connection to the Second Amendment. Well, but you've been reported and you're a threat, and so we need to come through. It's estimated at this point that there's more than 125,000 people in one of the databases alone, in the 9.46 database. God knows how many people are in the other database.
This is big brotherism in every way.
Police state stuff. Yeah.
Yes.
This is
What gets even more frightening is that they won't let individual people find out if they're on the list.
Right. We know now, of course, because of your Stop the Secrecy campaign, which dates back to, I believe it was last June, May, June?
9th.
Somewhere in there.
May 9th was a good yes.
Stop the Secrecy, that we're being stonewalled by the state police.
Correct. So the state police delayed. I think that's Bill's favorite term for what they do.
And deny.
Correct. And now they are deny. So we've gotten a deny by the records access officer. And now we have a deny by the agency administrative appeals officer. So we will be suing in the New York State Supreme Court in an Article 78 case.
When you say deny, this is a case of somebody who has filed a FOIL
Yes.
under the Stop the Secrecy campaign, and they've just been told no.
It gets a little bit funnier. Should we give our listeners a moment of levity? They're saying, no, we won't tell you what we think we know about you because it might violate HIPAA.
Yeah,
for
because
us
it's
to
your
tell
records.
You about you.
Yeah.
Your
Right.
records.
You should know your own records.
But
no.
we can report you to NICS. So
Yes.
that does not the third party notification does not violate HIPAA, but telling you about your own file violates HIPAA.
Well, and of course, in the
down
other
the rabbit hole
lawsuit,
here.
in the Montgomery versus Cuomo federal lawsuit, NYSP is one of the co-defendants. And the position taken there by the state attorney general's office, who maybe should have spoken with division counsel of the NYSP before they started sending these letters. In the Montgomery versus Cuomo lawsuit, their position is, we don't have any information that would constitute protected health information, so we're not violating HIPAA.
Can't have it both ways.
Apparently not.
All right. Well, we're going to run out of time here, Paloma. Let's tell folks what they can do if they want to get involved and they want to help fight this.
Sure. I mean, look, the most important thing that we need to get across is if you think you need treatment, if you know you need treatment, if you're recommended to get treatment, get treatment. The legal will follow later if something happens. We're far enough downstream now in these cases that we actually have an approach. People are getting their licenses restored. They are having their firearms returned to
So
them.
we've got some
We're
success.
fighting that
We've got
fight.
some success stories.
We are. So take some comfort from that. Please get the treatment that's being recommended. Past that, if you're ready to become an activist, yes, absolutely. Please, if you can make a donation, it all adds up and it would all help. If you'd like to write a letter to the editor, but you'd like some more facts about this program and how it's working, if you would like to join Scope, if you would like to become someone who's a public speaker, perhaps to your VFW or to one of your shooting clinics. I can't be everywhere at once, and it would be lovely to have some surrogate speakers at different places around the state.
Point people to this podcast.
Absolutely. Right. My website, law-policy.com, has a contact me page. Send an email through. The phone number also is there. Please call and leave a message.
That's 585-377-7260.
And otherwise, I think the one other thing I would add is this. If you know someone who has already been touched by this, help them to come forward. We do need people to fight the governor. I know it feels like there's a terrible stigma associated with all of this, but it's your civil rights and it's your Second Amendment rights, and this is the modern civil rights movement.
Yeah, well, we've got an out-of-control governor. Basically, he's using the state police as his personal Gestapo in many ways, and I'm hearing this not just from you, Paloma, and locally here, all over the state of New York. I'm hearing this. Where there are a lot of people are getting fed up with the New York State Police being used as personal Gestapo or his personal agents to harass us, and that's got to stop. Now, our listeners can help us, if you are civil rights oriented and want to help in the civil rights war we're in here. Contribute to the Legal Defense Foundation, the Legal Defense Foundation, P.O. Box 45, Marathon, New York, 13803. That's the Legal Defense Foundation, P.O. Box 45, Marathon, New York, 13803. Now, for our listeners that this is new to, and there might be Scope members, this is going to be listed in one of our Scope issues, firing lines, this address?
Yes, it will do. This is the new 501c3 spinoff from our Scope statewide organization, which is a 501c4.
Okay. Now, and on your law-policy.com, that address is on there?
Yes.
Okay, that should be on there. Okay, and the phone number for now is your business line.
It is until I get a nice snazzy 800 number for the LDF.
There you
yes.
go. All right. And folks, join Scope, scopeny.org. Get that Repeal the SAFE Act sign out on your lawn. We're in the midst of green winter right now, but better days they is a coming. And display that proudly. And join Scope if you're a Scope member already. Don't forget to renew your membership as it expires. And thanks so much, Paloma, for coming in today and telling us all about this.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks to both of you and to WYSL and to everyone who tunes in and decides to become an activist to defend and protect the Second Amendment.
Yeah, now these three segments that we've done, folks, will be listed hopefully in your law-policy.com site soon, and it'll be on our Second Amendment show website, 2ndamendmentshow.com, and on our Homeland Security show website, hsst.us.
Thanks so much. Tell a friend about the podcast, point them to this, and spread the word. And we'll see you next time.